I'd like to welcome you to the 20th in a series of webinars for peer supporters. Steve and everybody on the phone call, I can't believe we've done, this is number 20 of our webinars that we offer people. This webinar series is presented by members of the International Association of Peer Supporters with generous assistance from Optum, without whom this series would not be possible. N.A.P.S is solely responsible for the content of the webinars. The webinars will begin at noon Eastern Time. And again, thank you for your participation. These webinars will be recorded and be made available on our website for future viewing. As a participant in the webinar, your name, if you choose to provide it in that chat function, and any interactions you have in the Q&A session may be included in the recording. So I want to thank you for your participation. I'm the moderator. My name is Peter Ashenden. We've made a decision at Optum and working with N.A.P.S to take and offer you our technical abilities to be able to take and host a webinar. And again, Steve comes up with the content and the speakers, and we offer the platform so it can be offered to so many people. And I want to welcome you all to, I think, one of our most exciting webinars that we're going to have this year. I'm very, very pleased to have such a distinguished person with us. She's absolutely amazing. I'd like to take and introduce Mary Ellen Copeland. She's a dear friend of mine. She's a person that certainly has changed the landscape of how mental health services are delivered and how to truly make them person-centered and person-directed. We're very fortunate to have Mary Ellen with us. She's not able to do many of these speaking engagements, and we are very, very fortunate that somebody with her skills, her abilities, her knowledge, her expertise, and her just general niceness, because she's really a very, very nice person, who's going to take and share her thoughts of how we can take and make sure RAP is integrated in all of the work that we're doing, because it is such an important piece of work for us. So without further ado, Mary Ellen, I'd like to take and turn it over to you.
Okay, really nice to be here with everybody this morning. Actually, it's afternoon. And I also want to introduce you to Jane Winterling, who is here today to do this with me. Jane was played a critical role in the development of the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. She's an advanced level RAP facilitator, and she's actually been teaching RAP all over the world and has lots of lived experience. And Jane is here, and we are going to be doing some role plays later on in the webinar. So what we are discussing today is, in my view, very, very important. This is a bottom line answer for many, many people who have been suffering for years and years. That wrapped together with peer support is a bottom line answer. If we use these methods, RAP and peer support first, there are many people who would never have to go down that road. That being said, these strategies can be implemented at any time and bring people back to having a full and rich life. So in this webinar, we'll be talking about using peer support to develop a more effective and comprehensive RAP, and Jane and I will do unrehearsed role plays of developing a RAP together using peer support strategies. Peer support is not something you can really rehearse, and I want to encourage all of you that are peer supporters to practice and practice and practice. Do role plays with each other, and then reflect on them back so we can figure out, we're all figuring this out together, what really works. Using RAP and peer support, you can create a RAP that is more comprehensive and is a more effective guide to daily living, to your recovery roadmap, and to wellness support than one that you develop on your own, that you develop with a person who's not a peer supporter, or one that's developed in a group that's not using peer support methods and strategies. So doing it this way, I think, is the top of the line. At the same time that you're doing your RAP, even this morning, Jane and I, doing some practicing here, is building supportive and sustaining mutual relationships. so all the time that you're doing that, you're building supportive and sustaining mutual relationships, and that's something that a lot of us who have had mental health issues in our lives don't have very many of those. In fact, some of us may say we have none. I just wanted to let you know before I get going that Sherry Mead, who was instrumental, who really developed intentional peer support, and together in 2004 we wrote a book called Rap and Peer Support, and we are revising that book right now. We're doing this using a system of role plays, working with our lived experience. We're continuing to use our lived experience of issues related. Sherry has extreme issues related to Parkinson's disease, and she's no longer able to project her voice, and so that has been a real challenge to do peer support with somebody who can't project their voice. And along with me, has hearing issues and issues related to aging, and we really have to work to find ways to do that so that I can know what Sherry's feeling and Sherry can know what I'm feeling, and you can work those things out too, and we're hoping to have that book out for you later this year. And we'll be talking about our experiences. Knowing and incorporating the specifics of RAP and peer support can change the way you do things in all of your lives. It doesn't have to be keyed into a RAP group and an arranged peer support setting. These are life issues that don't necessarily demand that structure, and I've noticed, of course, ever since I started doing RAP and then started doing peer support, now that I'm working with Sherry, I just get better and better and better at the relationships in my life. I think it's important that all of you know that where RAP came from, that it was developed by a group of peers. It was not a top-down thing that was developed at some big institution or some university. It was developed in the cold of winter in a drafty old church hall in northern Vermont by a group of peers who were meeting to try and understand how they could recover. And this was at a time well before the value of peer support was widely recognized. So it was a peer support thing that we were doing, but people were talking a lot about how important and valuable peer support can be. And I also want you to know that research projects using rigorous research methods have proven that RAP, when it's developed with peers, helps people feel better and have less need for services. That's a kind of a designation and important. It means that we're listed on the National Registry of Evidence-Based Programs and Practices. And that's important for agencies that are thinking of providing RAP groups and are looking for funding, but it's not so important for all of us. Just basically know RAP and peer support. We know that works for us. We use it and we know it works. It's a specific, RAP itself is a specific planning structure, and I'm going to go through that a bit more with you when Jane and I do the role plays. But peer support is not as concrete as RAP. There are many different ways that peer support can happen. And that's the challenge. And so I only want to mention briefly, but there are the national practice guidelines that try to put definition around peer support. And my understanding is that all of this has come from peers, and I would really suggest that you study those national national practice guidelines that you can find online. That the intentional peer support program developed by Sherry Mead has clearly defined principles and tasks, and you should all study those and you should all know them. And that RAP has values and ethics that were developed by peers over time, and you can access them at this website, and you should get to know those as well. We couldn't take the time in a webinar to go over all of those, but they have to sort of become part of your being if you're doing peer support. And they all fit together. They all are similar. So in spite of these guidelines, and even though both RAP and peer support have manualized training programs, there's books and trainings, how a person is introduced to and experienced RAP and peer support varies widely. And how they're introduced to that and how they experience it can determine whether it moves people towards what they want their life to be like. So how we do it as peer supporters can make a huge difference. And while both RAP and peer support may sound easy, both, and especially both together, can be very challenging. All of this is a work in progress. We all keep learning and learning and learning together. It will never finish. I think we're going to just keep going on and on and on with it. Some of the challenges include wanting to help each other instead of learning together, being stuck in our old patterns, using clinical language and methods can get in the way of peer support, criticism can, judgment can, advice giving. It's so easy to give advice. We want to fix things. We want to make things right. Focusing on people's deficits, this is what's wrong with you, instead of what's right with them. Lack of mutuality, where one person feels like they're more important than the other person, or where the two people really aren't in sync with each other. And I was thinking about this, that I don't think we can do peer support with absolutely everybody, that there are sometimes people just don't hit it off. And I think it's very hard when agencies kind of say, you have to work with this person, you have to be this person's peer supporter, because sometimes it just doesn't work out. Have you ever seen things like that happen, Jane?
Yeah. No, there are sometimes like oil and water. Yeah, like either one is bad, but they don't mix.
So it's hard if we're assigned a person, and so I hope that it can develop more kind of the word I want to be thinking of is organically, that we just work with who we can work with well. And the challenge is lots of people want to use it. They want to call it an illness. They want to say we've got mental illness rather than saying we're working toward wellness, that we're working toward recovery. When one person wants to be better than the other. And like I said, when people are assigned to work together and it just doesn't work. Not being respectful in differences in worldview, that we all come from a different place. Need to respect those differences in places. We have boundary issues. How do we decide? Who do we invite over to our house? Who do we let call us in the middle of the night? When is it okay to do that? What are the boundary issues that we have? How much time can we spend? And one that's come up for me a lot lately is bossiness. I have some friends that are bossy. They are really, really bossy. They'd like to tell me and everybody else what to do and how to do it. And it doesn't work in peer support. They're wonderful people, and I accept that about them in my life, but it doesn't work for peer support. So this isn't inclusive. Can you think of anything, Jane, that right off the top of your head that should be on this list?
The list goes on and on, obviously, but I think one of the things that this list brings up for me is that in peer support, we have to be willing to give each other the time to work through all of these things, because I think that these are bumps that we run into in relationships. And so for me, being in a peer support relationship is a commitment to the relationship and working through the bumps. And
actually, Jane and I have had some huge bumps in our own relationship, and we have done some amazing work. The huge bumps, and we actually have worked them through. And sometimes when you're working through those huge bumps, it means sitting down and really going through some hard stuff and saying, what's really going on here? What's really going on? And
I just want to add that the conversations that we've had that have been so powerful in I think both of our lives, big learning things have been really difficult. But the willingness and the commitment to do that. So it isn't one of those things when you hit these bumps that you quit. It's when you hit these bumps, you deal with them, which is a lot of what RAP and intentional peer support are all about, right? Getting over and through these bumps. Successfully. Yeah, they're very hard.
Yes. So one thing I want to be sure and say is that part of peer support is to listen and listen and listen and listen. So often we want to interrupt and give our own point of view. We want to fix things, and to just be quiet and listen and listen and listen. Very, very important. That I just said in the last slide were, these are things I really want you to hold and carry with you. That some of us, it's very hard to listen. We just want to step in and fix things. And it's very important that we listen and listen and listen. And then we need to validate and validate and validate. Let the other person know you hear what they are saying and that you're trying to understand. And some of the ways that we can validate people is by taking the time to say, that sounds really hard. For instance, when Jane got to my house this morning, she told me about something that was happening, and I said, whoa. Well, actually, I think it was my husband Ed that said, whoa, that sounds really hard. And that makes a huge, huge difference. But that's awful. That's terrible. That's a real challenge. Too often, people say, oh, dear, that's not so bad. And that doesn't help. To say, I found that kind of thing hard to get over. Sorry that happened to you. That can make such a huge difference. Ask lots of questions and wait for answers. Give people time to think. Don't jump in so fast. Ask questions and wait for their answers. Give short responses. Avoid extended descriptions. You tell people a little bit about what happened to you, but avoid extended descriptions going on and on and on about what happened to you. Lectures. I don't know if any of you were lectured when you were kids. I can remember being lectured for long periods of time by people who thought they were doing something helpful for me. And I look back and it was just horrid. Be open and non-judgmental about whatever someone else describes or suggests. What we have to give each other is our lived experience, and using that lived experience to learn together and move towards what we want our lives to be like. So I want to begin now to do some role plays with Jane. And the first one is how we have our first contact with each other. And in this one where it says individual, we're going to do two role plays, and the first one is a bad example. Okay? And I'm the peer support worker, and Jane is in the back ward of an institution, and she's been there for a while. Morning, Jane. They told me at the desk you needed some peer support. They're trying to get you going, and so they sent me down here. Who are you? Get out of my room. Hey, they told me to come. This is what I'm supposed to do, and it's time that you just got up and just got going and got out of here. You're not going to any classes. You're not doing anything. You're right, and you're not going to get me to go do anything either. So that's a bad example. That's a bad example of how it goes. Okay, so I'm gonna redo that. Hi, Jane. I just want to stop by and say hi. Hello. Who are you? Well, I'm what they call a peer supporter, but I'm somebody who's had an experience similar to yours, and I just, I thought it would be great if you and I could talk, and I think maybe there's some things we could learn from each other. You're going to learn from me? I think I might learn quite a lot, because I was in the same situation you were in before, and I've found in my own life that talking to people who have the same kind of experience helps me a lot, and I'm hoping in the process it will help you a lot. Well, it certainly will be different from what's happened before, and I'd love to talk with somebody about what's going on who's not going to talk at me, but share with me what they've gone through. So let's do that. I can come in several times a week. You can tell me how much you want me to come in there, and we'll get together. Maybe eventually we can start doing some things together. I've been doing this fast thing, and maybe you'd be interested in that. So over time, we can just do some things together. Does that sound okay to you? Yeah, some people coming in have talked about this rap thing. So yeah, I'd like to hear more about it. Okay, so that's two different ways that you can start a relationship with people, and I think you can see how the second one is a better way to go. But if we just go in and say, I'm here and we're going to do a rap together, it's not going to work. And you may not even want to use the word rap until you've been with somebody for quite some time. And then I'm hoping you can say, this is what I'm doing. But would you be interested in helping me with mine? And maybe I can help you with yours. So I also wanted to say a lot of people are, of course, going to rap groups. And Jane and I are going to do a little role play about when somebody gets to a rap group. And Jane is the rap group facilitator. And I'm just going there. So yeah, to tell you the truth, I really am not sure at all that I want to be here. My psychiatrist told me that we're having this rap group thing, and I'm not sure that this is a really, really good idea for me. I don't like groups. I don't think I ever liked people that much, and I don't think I'd belong here. I don't think people are going to like me here. So maybe I should just go.
I completely understand what you're saying, because that was exactly how I felt and what I said the first time I went to a rap group. And I got there feeling like my life was pretty much over, and people were just, it seemed like, pushing me from one place to another. But when I got here, I found that there were people who were just like me, who were finding answers to things, and it was so full of hope. And I'm really hoping you can find some of that here with us.
But what I'm concerned about is that people are going to be telling me things I need to do, that I've got to do. And where do these answers come from? I'm not sure about all that. I don't need any more people telling me what to do.
We don't tell each other what to do. That's the amazing thing about it. And figuring out what works for us, sometimes we give each other amazing ideas. So it's more that you might get some ideas from somebody who's struggling with something that's very similar to what you're struggling with, and you might want to try it. Or you might remember that there's some things that have been helpful to you that you had forgotten all about.
What are some things people are suggesting, some things that I don't want to do, that I don't want to have anything to do with?
And you shouldn't do them.
Well, I don't have to do it just because somebody else doesn't work for them.
Yeah, no, don't do it. And I have this saying, if there was a one-trick pony, we'd all be riding it. And there isn't any such thing. And so you have to figure out what works for you.
Like, is this about meditation?
Some people really like meditation. Other people really don't.
Because I'm really turned off by meditation.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what about meds?
That's another thing where people have to make their own decisions about medication. It's a very difficult decision, and you need to think a lot about these medications. They are powerful, and we need to. It's a hard decision to make about medication.
Are you going to be teaching a lot about medications here?
No, we don't teach a lot about medication. That's up to each individual.
You force people to take medication too?
No.
Okay, we're gonna move on now to do a role play about the Wellness Toolbox. And the Wellness Toolbox is a list of things that you can do to get well, stay well, and make your life the way you want it to be. So Jane and I are going to do a little role play about the Wellness Toolbox. I personally have a very long list of wellness tools, and but I'm going to do this role play with Jane right now. Jane, I don't really get this Wellness Toolbox piece. I don't know what you mean, things that I can do to get well. My understanding is that I'm supposed to go to the doctor, and the doctor tells me what to do, or my therapist tells me what to do, or sometimes my sister tells me what to do, but I'm supposed to make a list of things that I can do. What's that about?
Isn't it amazing that we think of other people when we think of wellness tools, and what we realized working together and talking was that we actually have a lot of wellness tools that we've never really identified as wellness tools. And that we needed to give them the power that they deserve. So,
can you give me an example of a wellness tool? Just what that means.
Yeah, so for me, walking with my dog is actually a wellness tool. It gets me outside. I get light in my eyes. I have the companionship of the thinks I'm the best thing in the world, and I get exercise. So that's a wellness tool for me. I actually like singing. I like doing Zen tangles. I like kayaking. And I bet, did you ever think of these kinds of things as wellness tools?
No. My life is sort of limited. If you do them, actually, one of the things that you said there, Zen tangles, that sounds interesting, so sometime let's talk about those.
Yeah, there's a million wellness tools, and it really is what you would like. You don't have to do what I would like.
Okay, so now we're moving on to the daily maintenance list. And the daily maintenance list is what I'm like when I'm well, what I need to do every day to stay as well as I can, things I might need to do on any day. And Jane and I are going to do a role play about what I need to do every day to stay well. Jane, I noticed something the other day. I've been recovering from a medical issue that I have, and I was told that I need to take 6 weeks of recovery time. And I was thinking that maybe I need a new daily maintenance list for this recovery time. And so maybe I need to develop new daily maintenance lists as I go along. Do you have any ideas about that?
Well, I think that that's a wonderful idea. And actually, I do that myself. Part of when I'm struggling is that I actually create a daily plan that's very structured for myself in the morning for that day for as long as I need it. And then when I start to do better, and I don't need to do that so much. But, how would you picture making that work for you? Because I think it's an excellent idea.
Well, I don't want to look at myself as being in any of the other stages of rest, that I'm okay the way I am, but that taking special things I need to do to keep myself okay. There's more rest, more relaxation, more doing things that are easy for me to do. Like, I love to garden. This isn't the time when I can do my gardening. Work is too heavy for me. I'm thinking the kind of food I need to eat. I can't eat anything that's really spicy. I can't eat a lot of the kinds of things I would usually like to eat. I can't have a serving of French fries because that's not a good thing for me right now. So I think my daily maintenance plan has to reflect that. It has to reflect the need to drink a lot more water, and I think it reflects that too. That I might not always have to drink as much water or avoid French fries, but for right now,
I think you've got perfect solution to this next 6 weeks, and you're going to get through it really well.
I sure hope so. Some of this, I hope we're talking to many, many, many people right now, and a lot of what Jane and I are talking about is the reality of our lives. So while these are supposed to be role plays, we're really getting a lot of ideas and support from each other. So the next section is triggers for hot buttons. In intentional peer support, they call triggers hot buttons. Since we developed that, we have stuck to the language that people used back there in 1997 when people developed RAP. Triggers is one of the words that sometimes people find bothersome. And in N.A.P.S, in intentional peer support, they call it hot buttons. We've really never found another word that a lot of people were comfortable with. So we're stuck with this word, triggers. So that's what it it is for now. If sometime in the future, maybe we'll figure out something different. But triggers and a triggers action plan, and I want to do some role plays around that because triggers are so often an issue. Triggers is identifying things that if they happen would be upsetting. And so, Jane, when we talked just a few minutes ago, you told me about a trigger that you experienced.
So one of my big triggers from childhood is electric fences, and I had offered to help some friends move some animals, and then come to find out it's going to involve a lot of electric fences and moving them through areas with electric fences, and I am really struggling about an action plan for what I'm going to do with this because it's kind of unplanned for. So
the trigger that you've identified is electric fences, and I might say that electric fences is a trigger for me. And so getting down to the action plan, what is an action? And one of the things that people might have trouble with that I wanted to tell Jane about that's actually on my list of wellness tools, and now everybody's going to know that it's on my list of wellness tools, is to tell white lies. Sometimes you have to tell a white lie, and you don't want to say to these people, electric fences are a wellness, are a trigger for me. They really upset me, so I really can't help you do the animals. You might want to say, no, I think I'm coming down with a really bad cold, or I've been really, really tired lately, or my sister really needs a lot of help, and I really need to go help my sister. It's just that sometimes I think it's a good thing to tell the truth, but there are times when you can tell a white lie. So for me, a wellness tool is a white lie, and it's on my triggers action plan. And now you all know it. So,
and I'm adding it to mine.
and then early warning signs, action plan. Identifying signs that let you know you're not feeling well. And a list of the wellness tools you can use when you notice these signs. And just because of time restraints, we're not going to do the role plays, but I really encourage you to role play all of these situations. So the next one is when things are breaking down in an action plan. So when things are breaking down is a really important time. It's that time when we used to, in the past, me at least, and I know lots of people have told me in the past, when we used to run off to the emergency room and end up, some of us would end up in the hospital for days, and it was the beginning of a down slippery slope, and started taking medications, and so it's such a critical time. I have found, since I have when things are breaking down, and the action plan that goes along with that, I've had this now for many, many years. Rap is 18 years old, and I don't end up going to the emergency room anymore for mental health issues. I don't end up needing to have a crisis for mental health issues because I have figured out how I can get through them. Jane, you were telling me about what it's like for you when things are breaking down for you.
My daily plan, and that I'm going to bed when I have and getting up at specific times, which is actually in my daily maintenance plan. But what happens when things are breaking down is that I start waking up every couple of hours, and so I'm not getting the rest that I need to be getting. And then I get really, really irritable, and I just feel really raw, and it's very hard for me to be around people.
So, Jane, what kind of things do you think? So what wellness tools have you found? I have that problem too, where I wake up at night and I can't get back to sleep, and it's really hard. Are you finding anything that helps?
Yes, the thing that helps for me is to have a book on tape, and I have it on my phone, and I have it really low, and I look for voices that I find soothing, and that helps me to stop worrying because I listen to the tape and I fall back to sleep. That's great. And so this whole, when things are breaking down in an action plan, is just a really important place to come to the peer support is going to be helping with that. With just a little. Okay. So I wanted to move on to the crisis plan or the advance directive, and I think all of you know exactly what that is. And there's several of these that I wanted to do role plays about, and one is signs that others need to take over. And Jane, this is a hard one for people. People say, I don't really want to think about signs that other people need to take over. I don't want to go there. What can you think of a time when you need somebody to take over for you? So as things progress for me, my anger gets more and more intense, and I start pushing people away and yelling at them and telling them to leave me alone and get away from me. And it's exactly the opposite of what they need to do. So I've also had to have very powerful conversations with my supporters about that. And I used to think that it was okay to just tell them what I wanted them to do for me, not have a conversation. And I've found that supporting my supporters to support me has been powerful in terms of making this work and making the crisis not feel like a crisis. And that's really helpful to me because it reminds me of a time when I was having a really bad time, and I had told my daughter in advance that if I tell her to leave, that's a sign that I'm having a really bad time and that she shouldn't leave. And I just remember having that bad time and saying, leave, I don't need you here now, leave. And she just stayed and stayed and stayed. And so this talking about it this way helps me to remember those things and helps it to work for me. So the crisis plan includes supporters, it includes your list of your medications, your doctors, your insurance, your treatments. Since we're almost out of time, we're going to have to cut short the role plays a little bit, but I did want to say that it's very, very important to make a strong plan so that you can stay at home or in the community. And to think about, Jane, what are some things that, like when you're having a really rough time, what helps? So, when I'm having a hard time, I actually have a hard time talking, and so I actually came up with a list that things that others could do for me that were helpful, and so it's things like take me for a walk with me, do Zen tangles with me, work on a crossword puzzle, feed me, and Mary Ellen and I were talking, one of the things I really find helpful is to go and help me figure out what to wear. To go, getting dressed is really hard for me, and so not wearing the same thing for 6 days in a row is good. So a couple of things that you said right there were really interesting to me. You keep mentioning Zen tangles, and I'm finding myself really, really more and more curious about these Zen tangles. So I might want to find out more of those. And when you talked about food, one of the things that's hard for me is that most recently when I was sick, I was afraid to ask people to bring me food because I was afraid they would bring me food that I couldn't eat, that wasn't the right kind of food for me. And I'm just thinking I needed this food that people can bring me that I could eat, and then I could resolve that problem so people could actually bring me food. So that would help a lot. But let me just go a little bit quickly through the rest. Things, the
want other people to do chores I need others to take care of, signs that this plan is no longer needed, and then the signatures. And then the post-crisis plan, which every section of RAP can be enhanced and made more comprehensive and effective by a conversation about it. So every one of the questions in the post-crisis plan can do that. There's so much to say on this topic. We could go on and on and on. But just remember, listen, get in the habit of listening with full attention to what other people are saying, and validate. Get into that habit as well. When somebody says that must be hard, it helps a lot more to me. They say that must be hard than to say, oh dear, that's not such a big deal. It helps so much more when somebody understands what you're going through rather than try to talk you out of it. And if you have questions about RAP and peer support, you can contact info@rapandrecoverybooks.com. There's all kinds of resources that we have. You can go to the RAP and Recovery Books website, and we've got books about RAP for life, and RAP for addictions, and RAP for people with developmental disabilities, and RAP for kids, RAP for veterans, RAP for people in the military. We have a new RAP workbook that's just, we have a RAP app. So there's all kinds of, we just are trying to find more and more things that make it easy for people to do RAP. We also have a whole website full of information about RAP that you can easily access. And I wanted to let you know before we go into questions about the RAP Around the World Conference, August 24th to 26th. It's such a great opportunity for peer support, going to a big conference like this. So now Jane and I are looking forward to your questions and your feedback. So, okay, somebody has asked the question about RAP or dual diagnosis. That's now called RAP for addictions. That as the language changes, we try and keep up with that. So we're looking forward to your questions.
Do we have any questions in the chat box?
Yes, I've been scrambling here to keep up with the
conversation in the chat box. I couldn't keep up with, Steve.
Yeah, I scrambled. I've got it all so far. There was a question about an example of validation. What do you mean by validation? And can you give an example?
Yes, validation means that when somebody is having a hard time, instead of saying, oh, you'll get over it, or that's not so bad, you say, oh, well, I am sorry you are having a hard time. I can tell you're having a hard time. You just seem so upset. I can give one example of validation that's a very personal one for me that happened lately. And I was in the hospital, and I was being wheeled down the hall on a stretcher, and a nurse looked down at me, and she said, how are you feeling, dear? And I said, I'm terrified. And she said, I would be terrified too. And that was so much more helpful to me than if she had said, oh dear, this is nothing. You have the best doctors. You're going to get over this quickly. It was just so much more helpful to me. And so, she understands exactly where I'm coming from. So that's what validation is. And we have been learning over time that that's what really works for people instead of, oh dear, that's going to be okay. I remember at a workshop quite some time ago where a man said to me that in the last 4 months he had lost 4 very important people in his life: his wife, his sister, his mother, and a good friend. They had all died. And he said, this is horrible, and my counselor keeps saying to me, I've got to get over it. And I said to me, whoa, I said to him, that sounds awful. I'm not sure you can ever get over something like that. That's awful. Well, just to help you figure out how to get your life better, but that's awful. And he was so relieved for somebody to say, that's really awful, instead of expecting that he's suddenly going to feel better.
Mary Ellen, we have a question that's saying, is there anything that RAP can do to help somebody with pain or chronic pain?
Absolutely. I've spent much of the last year doing a revision of a book that I did a long time ago that was Wing Against Relapse, and it's called RAP for Life. And that RAP for Life is about using RAP for all kinds of health problems, including chronic pain. And there's lots of ideas in that for wellness tools. But I really encourage anybody who's got chronic pain to get into a peer support relationship with one or several people and talk about that. Just talk about it and talk about it, and you'll come up with ideas that will really help you get through that. And you feel like you're not so alone with the chronic pain.
Steve, do we have any other questions? Do we have any other questions in the chat box at this point?
Yes, there's one that's rather important. I think one individual has asked, he says, I'm all into listening, but what about solutions? Basically, when do we offer solutions to people?
We, as peer supporters, we work together with the person to find solutions together. And if that's what peer support is. It's about a process of uncovering solutions. And if you are working, there's just a couple of you working together, maybe you need to bring in more people and you all talk about it and you come up with solutions that way. It's like, me talking to Jane, and I realized too that electric fences are a trigger for me too, and it helped me to come up with a solution. So it's through this process. RAP and peer support are not about giving people final answers. So if people are looking for final answers, if they're looking for final solutions, then they need to go to somebody, to a healthcare professional who's just going to tell them what to do. But we found that doesn't work very well. It works better if we're involved in a dialogue that helps us find the solutions for ourselves. The solution for me for my chronic pain might be very different. Like if you had chronic pain, Jane, what might be a solution for you?
Actually, my chiropractor is a big solution for
But Jane would go to a chiropractor. I have a deep bathtub that I would use. I have some special cream. I have a couple kinds of special cream. You find lots of solutions, but you find them by talking to each other.
But I'm also going to find out what those creams are from Mary Ellen, because I might try them.
And they're pretty darn good, I'll tell you that. Yeah. Okay.
Steve, have you seen any other questions?
There's a question about from one individual who's starting a grandparent support group and was wondering, they're doing RAP for grandparents, and wondering if you had any suggestions, Mary Ellen.
Well, that's wonderful. I hope that those people who are starting this support group for grandparents who are taking care of their grandchildren write into me on either my Facebook or the info account and let us know how that's going, because that's a very, very valuable resource. And I think using these peer support methods I really encourage them to study the practice guidelines, that the ones that I listed at the beginning, the values and ethics of RAP, the practice guidelines for N.A.P.S, and the intentional peer support principles and tasks, and to use those as a guide. There are many grandparents now who are ending up providing care for their grandchildren, and it's a big issue, and I find that it's a big issue even for me. I don't provide full-time care for any of my grandchildren, but I provide lots and lots of support for my grandchildren. I have some grandchildren that have serious, extraordinarily serious medical issues, and so that I have to provide. There's just not enough adults to go around for these kids, and so we as grandparents get pulled in a lot more than we would if these kids didn't have these medical issues. And so this kind of support group where people can talk together and get ideas and at least get validation for what they're going through, I think it's extraordinarily helpful.
Short, there's a question here about, is there a RAP for crisis intervention?
Yes. You can develop a RAP for almost anything. And when I wrote the RAP for Life book, that was the focus on how it has a RAP for use in prisons and institutions. There's RAP for people who save too much stuff. There's RAP for people in all kinds of situations. But for crisis intervention, I think one of the very big things is those practice guidelines, the RAP values and ethics, and the intentional peer support principles and tasks. And then I think what we want to do is use peer support. Lately, when I was in the emergency room at the hospital, there were other people who were in crisis, who were in mental health crisis, who were in other rooms in the emergency room, and what they did was they put them in the room, and then they just had a police officer stand outside the door. And I found myself wanting to go over and just sit and talk with those people. And peer support needs to be part of all crisis intervention. It needs to be done by peers, and peer support to me is the answer to crisis. And I think we need to be there for each other.
Well, Mary Ellen, I can't thank you enough and Mary Ellen and Jane for offering our group a wonderful presentation. We've had record number of people attending this. You guys certainly know how to attract a crowd, and you know how to keep their attention because they stayed in the room. So I want to, on behalf of Optum, on behalf of N.A.P.S, I want to tell you, thank you very, very much for sharing your wisdom, your insights, your skills, and your knowledge with our group. The comments are showing me how much they loved it and benefited from it. So again, I want to thank you very, very much for your time and energy today.
And Peter, can you let people know that if they didn't get their questions answered, that they can send them to us, and we'll do the best we can to get back to them with responses. But I want to make sure that everybody's...
You want to talk about how we're going to deal with responses?
Yes.
Yes, I've got questions here that are unanswered, and what we will do is publish the responses, the questions and responses on our website, and also in a June newsletter.
Okay, and give us a couple days to get the answers for those, because we may not be able to do it, right this afternoon. But we will get them back to people, so keep watching for those.
Again, thank you all very, very much. Thank you all, the participants, for taking and being part of this very wonderful experience. And all things considered, I think the technology worked. We managed to get through the problems, and we did it, folks. So congratulations to everyone.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks so much, everyone.
Take care, everybody.